Thanks very much. Thanks for coming out. Great to be here. So I thought that since I predate some of you, not all of you, some of the people here certainly were here when I arrived here, I'd say a little bit about myself before I start and use that to kind of inform the vision that I think I have that we can use to migrate this department. I was told by Steve Swavey that my 25-year chair is actually downstairs. I haven't taken it. It's actually donated to SAC. I don't know if they're going to use it or not, but apparently. So that says that I've been around long enough, if that's the case. So in terms of the things that I've been involved in, the things that I think have shaped me as a scientist and a teacher have been the activities that I've been involved in. And so I just picked a few that I thought were particularly exciting for me. We're now on our third cause, looking at energy and society. The first one was a dozen years ago now. And we'll be taking a group of students now to New Zealand with Jonathan, myself, and Semi this coming May, with the course starting up. Those have been incredibly rewarding experiences for us to get to travel and spend some time with students. In 1998, we began a sister program, graduate program in geoenvironmental engineering to go with the undergraduate program. And that was shaped on the COSAPUP report, which was basically the 50-year anniversary of Vannevar Bush's Science, the Endless Frontier report that produced NSF in the post-war years out of research. And we tried to stick to the tenets of that report in having a broad-based program, core courses, the fundamentals, the ability of students to be able to collaborate and for a wide range of disciplines. And in 2003, that program merged with the fuel science people, energy and environmental engineering. I think it's the template now that has been used for our multi-option but single graduate program that we have in the department, which Larry now runs, with the first incarnation of the check sheet, the flowchart shown there at the back. In terms of scholarship, we're involved in a number of projects. Recent interest is in underground research. We've worked with a group of about 1,000 scientists to try and establish a deep underground science laboratory. This is the acronym for it in hosting that project, with about 700 particle physicists and about 300 biologists, geologists, and engineers. Seems to be foundering, but I think there's a general theme that I think will be reincarnated in different places around the world. And I'd say that perhaps my most enjoyable scholastic activity has been our endeavors with G3, which is a collegial group of individuals throughout this department, within the College of Science and the College of Engineering as well, that revolves around the idea of pulling together analysis, experiment, and observation together in some similar package where you work with people from different backgrounds to be able to get the most out of your science. And it now involves a group of students, and it's actually centered around a lab which is up on the 4th floor of Dyke, which is a 24/7 lab, machines booked up to the hilt, and never stops. And that's something that I think that I would see some use for in this department as we go. And finally, as Turgay mentioned, I served for 3 years from 2000 to 2003, spanning the kind of mini dip in the post 9/11 debacle, where we grew college expenditures from something like 39 million in 1999 to just 52 in 2003. And so I served there for 3 years, and at the same time was also chair of the Graduate Research Committee of the Graduate Council, which is the body for which the chair puts on the graduate research exhibition, for which those are photographs. In our first year was that we put on the performance option. So those are the kinds of activities that I've been involved in. So I'd like to talk about what kind of issues that we face in this department, or in our disciplines in general. And there are two things that I'd like to pull out. One is enrollment, and the other one is kind of the evolution of education as we go forward. So this is an interesting slide. This comes from Steve Holditch. It gives enrollments with time for petroleum engineers in the US. I saw a more recent one of this by Ramona Graves for 2012, which shows basically that the post-oil shock peak in 1980 is exactly replicated now in 2012. And if you look below that, you have the price of gasoline in dollars per gallon corrected in some way over that appropriate time. And so I think that kind of informs what we do, is that even though we think that we might like to have some control over enrollments, we don't. We have very little control over enrollments. These, of course, are petroleum engineers in the US. For us, within this college, this peak in this department was about 500 students in petroleum, I think, 500 students in mining engineering at the time. Right now, Crystal sent out the new numbers for us. Right now, we have 1,400 students. 400 students are in EVF. The other majors are about 1,000 students. 500 are petroleum, and the other 4 or so majors make up the remainder. So things haven't changed very much. In 1980, I seem to remember this number, Andy, I'm not sure if I'm quoting right. You said maximum number of students in MinEc, which is what EVF morphed into under a different rubric, was something in the order of 72. So in other words, the enrollment numbers, certainly EVF has grown with a different focus. But in terms of our overall enrollments of students, they're roughly the same. They've been redistributed as we added different disciplines, but they haven't changed significantly. So that to me says we have little control over enrollments. But what we can do is we can get maybe a bigger part of that pie by taking the ones that go to other universities and bringing them in here and be able to swell our numbers that way and increase quality. So to do that, we need to have some profile externally. And I would make the case that that profile has to be driven by both excellence in research and being able to broadcast all the wonderful things we do to be able to attract those students. The second observation is that educational drivers, we live in a time of unusual change. E-delivery is a desire. I class capture my courses. I have a YouTube channel that I use that the students can access should they so want to go back to the classes or go for the first time if they haven't been in class. It's a time when open access exists with a variety of different outlets. MITx, edX was the Harvard-MIT model to put courses online, and it's expected this summer that more people would access those courses than all living MIT alumni combined. And so it's the profile by which you get out there and you get accepted as a major player. So of course, Cachet brings students in. So that's kind of a threat in some respects, but it looks at competition and competitiveness. If you can beam your information and get your information from the best teacher in the world, the highest caliber perceived institutions in the world, why would you go elsewhere? Well, of course, the link that we have in that is that you have to look at certification, and that's what we do. We certify that the students are fantastic when they go to work for their employers, and that's what one of the functions that we perform. So in terms of threats and opportunities, I would say that we have some control over enrollments, but it's really just at the margins. It's distribution between programs. If you want to get more students in there, it's tough to do that because it's tough to target. But one way you do that is by excellence and being able to broadcast that excellence in some external way. The other item is that the education arena really is changing very quickly. And so using this online delivery and e-delivery to be able to put content online, not just say things about your faculty, but put content online is another way to bring notoriety and a positive way to your department. And that's one thing that we can be doing by massively, I would say, moving our courses into online delivery. And so you have the content there, you attract people because it's something that they want to get. I know that when I use websites, I don't go to MIT, I don't go to EME, but I search on something in Google and it takes me to the right place. You go in through the back door. And so having content on there is one way to do that. So I'd make the case that we need to integrate capabilities in our disciplines, work on compelling questions. That is the science that we do. Get that out there in terms of our resident instruction and use that in terms of online delivery of content to become the go-to place for what we do. And so the question is, what do we do? We have a number of names in our titles of the department. It's changed over the years very rapidly. We have multiple programs within the department. But I would say that one central theme that allows us to rally around is the idea of energy. And here's a couple of quotes by the Nobel laureate, Mr. Buckyball, Richard Smalling, making the case that energy is the most important item on the planet. Don't worry about water. Got lots of water. Don't have so much potable water. But with energy, you can desalinate. And from John Holdren, the President's Science Advisor, in saying that this nexus between energy, environment, and economy is the most crucial component to our survival on this planet in a sustainable way with the terawatt challenge for a population approaching 10 billion people. So certainly energy, environment, and economy are important. None better than shown by this. You might have seen this from Hans Rosling these statistical guides. This is basically showing the evolution of, let me start it again because I want to actually pause it. Go back. So this is looking at the growth in gross domestic product with energy use over the period of basically this century. And so if you look at the evolution of this, if I can get it going again. Can I not get this going? I knew I shouldn't have stopped it. Where each of those individual balls are related to, where each of these little circles are related to the population size, and you see that evolving over time in terms of the idea you want to live better gross domestic happiness, as the king of Bhutan would say, you use more energy in a capital-intensive way. It's probably no surprise if we look at carbon outputs for those things now on the same graph, that if you look now over a different time scale from the 1820s, just past the American Civil War, turn of the century, First World War, Second World War, in terms of CO2 emissions versus gross domestic product per person, CO2 emissions per person, that you have the same graph. It really states the case that we work on a planet where it's carbon-intensive energy use, and this graph is really no different from the other relationship that we just saw. If we want to attack that, to be able to work in a less carbon-intensive economy, then we have a number of options. You can use this concept of Socolow and Socolow in terms of reduction wedges, stabilization wedges. And to take care of one of these wedges, you can do things in a variety of ways. You can capture and store CO2, and if you want to take care of one of these individual wedges for CO2 avoided, this is the amount of capacity you have to change in that regard. If you want to be able to do it by nuclear energy, this is what you have to do. So there are a variety of options we have in terms of fuel switching. Out of these, the only ones that are feasible in some societal way, both economically and acceptable, you could argue that nuclear fission is one of them. You might not. Certainly Japan doesn't, Germany doesn't. Certainly the president has just arranged to have the CAFE standards changed to boost mileage. So this is one way to be able to take care of that, changing 2 billion cars. But the other way is by fuel switching to lower carbon fuels, not zero carbon fuels, but lower carbon fuels. And the reason that is attractive is because this happens naturally by economy. And it's being driven not by some requirement to be able to push renewables into the portfolio, but as the fact that it actually deals with it in an organic way and happens driven by the economics itself. And so for us, I think that's fortuitous because we kind of live on top of that stuff. Ourselves is underneath our feet. Certainly we have a geographical connection. Certainly there are important science challenges related to natural gas recovery and utilization. And certainly it's part of a national and international view in terms of what NSF sees as the integrated future of sustainability, engineering, education, and science program, the SEAS program, in which it's invested $1 billion. It fits naturally under that rubric as a term of a national priority. And so I would make the case that natural gas is just one of many themes that we can rally around. It's going to be geographically and regionally important to us. It's going to be nationally important and internationally important in terms of energy and climate. And it's something in which we already have some expertise in. And it spans the range of looking at subsurface, upstream issues, which we know the issues are groundwater, fracking, efficiency of fracking, being able to do it in a sustainable way, but also in a productive and profitable way, all the way through to distribution, to retooling the plant to be able to accommodate and run on gas. And I see from science, just this last week, big challenges of using natural gas as feedstocks for heavier petrochemical feeds for plastics, etc. And so it seems to me that through this spectrum, there's something that everyone within our department can contribute in some way. Of course, many of us are working in this area. This is my own attempt to do this in a talk we gave in Perth about 8 months ago. It's not without its jeopardy. This is what I read in my newspaper a couple of days before I was about to make the talk, and I took a picture of it with my phone of arrests, not at my talk, but of the whole issue of fracking, and I was curious as to what would transpire. Of course, the people who turn up are concerned about this in Australia, and many of the questions related to that. And certainly there was, you could perceive that there was an agenda, but we're trying to make the case that there's some environmental, in a global way, benefit to natural gas as a fuel supply, that maybe if these problems of fracking production can be ameliorated or completely mitigated, then it represents a positive way forward. And of course, if you look at what we do in our department, you don't have to look very far. I could look, I know at least a dozen individuals who are working on projects that are related to the natural gas issue. So it seems it's something that's right on the table for us. So how do we view this from the stance of this department? Well, this department has grown over the years. Separate department of petroleum engineering, separate department of mining engineering, combined mineral engineering, mineral processing in there. Separate section of fuel science, joined, changes names. So we're unusual in that we have a variety of programs that have survived and thrived within our midst. We have new programs that have evolved, including online programs. We are, and we tend, since these are aligned typically with industries, we tend to align very strongly with those. We think these programs are pretty good and produce products that we're proud of in terms of people. But the other way that we can also look at this is to be able to think about it in a slightly different way. And instead of thinking about programs, is to think about it in terms of the specialties that those individuals, sometimes in the program, sometimes beyond program boundaries, bring to the table in terms of what they're able to do. And so in the same way as when Neil Lane was in NSF in the mid-1990s, materials, environment, and life sciences were the topics du jour that they were interested in. And that all the interesting work on those was in the interaction of those disciplines. You can make the same case for what we do, is that the exciting stuff we do, certainly in terms of how the public views, is how our disciplines relate to the public perception, the public utility of our disciplines in terms of public policy. So you could make the case that this kind of encompasses our disciplines, but also in a scientific way, the really exciting science that can be done lives at the intersection of those disciplines, at the periphery. For people working at the height of their profession in each of those components are able to look at science in a different way at the intersections and those boundaries, both between individual disciplines themselves and between collections of disciplines where you have double, triple, quadruple, quintuple junctions. That is where I think the important and interesting science is. And that's kind of the watchword, I think, of what we've tried to do in G3 as we look at problems where we bring different skills to the table. I'm not an experimentalist, but I think I work with maybe one of the best experimental geophysicists in the world, and that's how we do experimentation, and I provide something else to that. So I don't know what the technical issues are completely related to disciplines that are really far beyond mine, but I know that in my discipline, subsurface engineering, it's difficult. There's lots of challenges. We work over 14 decades of length scales. We work from milliseconds for seismics to millions of years for radioactive waste disposal. We look at interactions between biological and chemical behaviors. We look at thermal effects, we look at geomechanical effects, which are important. We have a variety of different measurement techniques which interrogate different scales to different degrees. We have a variety of different models that attack those. And that is the kind of leverage that we have to bring to bear. It doesn't exist to a single person, but exists to specialties in individual people. And linking those up in some profitable way basically elevates the science that I know that I'm able to do, and I think it's kind of the watchword of how we go. That's what we do. These kinds of challenges aren't limited to the kinds of things I work on. Certainly BES at Basic Energy Sciences at DOE have gone through looking at a variety of different disciplines as they relate to the energy picture of the future. The hydrogen economy, materials for aggressive environments, catalysis. All of these have significant challenges which I would make the case can only be solved by looking at things from different perspectives, different disciplines, and bringing that so that the whole is greater than the sum of the parts, to use a cliche. So how do we do that? How do we turn that desire into reality? I said that I thought that a model for this that I've participated in is our G3, not broader G3, which probably includes about 15 people, but perhaps our more narrowly focused center, which exists around a lab, which is a 24/7 operation, which allows people to be able to share data. So I think we need to be able to do something with the physical infrastructure that we have in this department in terms of resources collaboratory. And so the idea is that maybe outside your office, you have grad students working there. They share data with each other. They work with other students, grad students, other graduate students from other advisors. They work on common problems. They work in a pleasant, Google-esque environment where they can feel comfortable. Your kids get dropped off at the end of the day. They spend time with you. They're spending time with the grad students. You guys decide to go home at the end of the day, and you're excited to get back the next day to see what the latest developments are, not just from the work that's being done outside your office, but from the co-location of experimental equipment, where you have some anchor store piece of equipment that would be of broad interest to a group of people. So it allows a space in which you can all work, can all contribute, not to replace the existing satellite labs that we have around campus, which are many, both in the college and around the campus and also internationally for that matter, but to be able to supplement it in an environment that is conducive for us to be able to collaborate together. To be able to also extend that to, the big thing in geophysics and extension of engineering is being able to use field projects to be able to understand processes at these very big length scales. Not just at micro scale, which has some influence on the large scale. And so also to use this as a step to be able to link with these, whether it's the $100 million DOE wells initiative to put geothermal wells that people could use as test beds for technology, from looking at combination between geothermal circulation of CO2 and IGCC, from the carbon initiatives, to the demonstration projects that have existed around the country, from Colorado School of Mines, Azure Tatunku's idea of a distributed well network for natural gas shale with experimentation, for the work that we plan to do with Chevron in terms of hydrofracking in Switzerland, in an underground laboratory to be able to get up close and personal to the frac, to be able to see if our theories about fracking hold up, but to be able to make those linkages across our department, across campus, and across the globe, in terms of being able to bring our science into this. This doesn't work unless you're pointing at it. So this is what I think we should do. So this is just an enunciation of what's been there. I think to integrate research endeavors, we need some physical change in what we do to be able to do that, to spur that. I think the watchword is to integrate analysis, experiment, and observation in some way. I think it's to integrate disciplines in some fruitful way. And one potential mechanism to do that is natural gas around many others. Of course, there's an initiative, a nascent initiative to do that on campus anyway. We use it to bring in support for this endeavor through consortial arrangements. Deans are always looking for nice things to be able to float to potential donors, and I think this is one thing that would resonate with that. And in addition to that, we use this to host something. So that the closest analog that I can think of in terms of this would be some graduate, not a graduate program, but a graduate synthesis of activities. Not the Geosystems program, which has been very successful in looking at master students where you take a geophysicist and an engineer and a geologist together to be able to work on problems of significance to industry. But here you take doctoral students to work on a problem of focus, a research problem of focus to industry, where you take experimentalists and analysts together to be able to contribute to a solution. So one example for that would be we have a program right now with Chevron. We're looking at hydraulic fracturing. We work on a bunch of PMA cubes that get fractured in the lab, and another group does the analysis and modeling of them. That's brought together into a package. The package is the whole thing which industry are interested in, and so looking at being able to support this by industry, I think is an attractive opportunity. So physical space to be able to do this that allows us to work together more effectively, and a focus in terms of pedagogical outputs, if you like, in terms of what would come out of this. And also, at the same time, looking at opportunities with other funding agencies, such as as I mentioned before, the $1 billion SEAS program. So for me, the centerpiece of that is the scholarship and research that happens. To do that, we need students, excellent students that are smarter than me, I think, to be able to do the things that I would like. And how do we do that? I think the only way we can do that is by reaching out in terms of profile and being able to use web presence to do that. You can have a very nice website to do that. We have a great website for this department. But I would make the case that it's content, maybe online class content, that gives you a large bank that when people don't search for us as a department, but search for the materials, the products we make, coming through the back door, that gives us a hook into being able to access people. I right now capture my classes. We're capturing this class, by the way, on video, and I post it on my own YouTube channel. if you want to go there, you're welcome to do that. I tell the students, I told Mel Sarah, if you have insomnia one night and you need to get to sleep, perhaps go and look at the YouTube channel. But the reality is, it's out there. Not perfect, it's content out there. And I think when people search, it is content related. It's not just saying that we're great, we're lovely, but it has to be related to content. So I would make the case that driven by individuals, because we want to do it, because we individually see some benefit from it, that we start to vigorously migrate our content out there for all the courses we do. I see the advantage. I think that teaching is great. It's difficult to travel when you teach. I think if you give delivery of the materials that you have in class and bank that over the years, you have a certain amount of material that you have, so you can use your classrooms differently. You can use your classrooms to talk to students and to allow them to really voice what they need to know and to go through one-on-one with these things on a different schedule so that you can travel around and also be able to meet those obligations as well. But so I think that's the other thing that we need to. Of course, we have some people doing that. We have an online program already in NG Sustainability Policy, which is all online. But this is a way for us to be able to take the content from the broader spectrum of what we do and be able to transfer that online. And then I think also with this physical space, the profile from the content allows us to do different things. It allows us to track people. It allows us to track people. It allows us to reach a broader reach of faculty who'd like to come work with us because they see us as the best place to do what they want to do. They see it as a vital place where there's stuff going on 24/7 in the lab, surrounded by offices, where there's some excitement that's generated. And of course, it allows you to reach traditionally underrepresented populations that will come in because they see the same things as well and want to be part of that as well. So I think the key to this is being able to do the things we talked about. Migrate stuff online, create space where we work together, work at the interfaces between disciplines because we want to, and be able to get some benefit. So I think in terms of that, you saw some things on the previous slide. I might as well use the previous slide. Cause is something that we've used in the past to be able to engage students in what we do. I think if you have space to do this, I'd make the case that we could do something like Monster Garage. Groups of students come in for the summer, maybe as an REU site. They make a piece of equipment they need to be able to use to measure something, and they go and measure it. And so you do it in a dynamic way, but you do it in this space where they naturally, so you don't have to set up classes, they naturally work in this environment where it's very easy to engage what they're doing just because it's physically set up. And so this is what some of our students who have been involved in cause, I can remember one came back early from cause because she was off to an EWB, an Engineers Without Borders service learning activity in Central America. And that's another way for our students to get involved in diversifying their activities. I'm not sure what the equivalent for us, if we wanted to do that with EQ'd, energy, environment, and economy, would be. But I'm sure there is some equivalent that we could apply to that to be able to reach broader groups. So that's kind of the long and the short of it. I think that to be able to do a better job with what we have excellent faculty and staff already, but a central theme for what we could do is a georesources collaboratory. We use that as a mechanism for us to be able to do a number of things. It allows us to be able to promote the disciplines between our individual disciplines, or the science areas between our individual disciplines where they overlap, to be able to work at our best, to work in our specialties and be able to reap the greatest rewards of that. It allows us to be able to work not only in experiment and analysis, physically in the same place, and to be able to reach out to these hugely rich observational sites where interesting data and interesting processes are observable to be able to transfer that back into the mix. You do it also by having some program that integrates our existing options within our single existing graduate program together in a research mode to be able to look at observation, experiment, and analysis to solve problems that people want to solve, either supported by industry or by federal agencies. And natural gas, of course, is just one mechanism, which is a convenient mechanism to be able to explore these things at this E3 nexus. And so that, as I see it, allows us, it all pins on us being the go-to place. You choose your university you want. We want to be the Harvard of EQ, basically. To be able to be the place where you come to be able to figure out exactly what goes on. It's the place you want to go and spend your sabbatical. The place you want to send your students to work in the labs. And from that, I think, all things could come to us. So I'm going to leave it at that. Thank you.